Hi, welcome to Kick and Crochet. Today's video is going to show you how to do the thermal stitch. And this video has been kind of a long time coming. My thermal fingerless gloves and hat have been by far my best-selling patterns ever, and I've been meaning to make a video since I kind of picked up doing the YouTube again, but I hadn't done it yet. So to start, you just need a row of single crochet. I'm going to do a few stitches here. Or really, I guess if you were doing a different pattern, you could start with any stitch for this part, this foundation row. Okay, so I've got a row of single crochet. So now I'm going to do a row of single crochet through the front loop only. Now, if you're looking at the fingerless gloves pattern, in that the setup, I believe I worked through the back loop only, and that's because I didn't turn at the end of that row. So if you're doing thermal stitch just back and forth in rows, you're going to work this setup row through the front loop only. The thermal stitch is nice. It makes a really thick, warm fabric, so it's great for winter clothes. I have plans to make a sweater out of it, which is going to be awesome. I just don't have the yarn for it yet. So that will come someday. Okay, so now this is our setup, and so you can see that we have this front loop left over from the row below and the regular stitch from the current row. So we're going to start by inserting our hook from the bottom going up through that leftover front loop and through the front loop of our current row. Then we'll yarn over, pull through both, and finish the single crochet. So now we'll do the same thing from the bottom through that leftover front loop from the row below and the front loop from the current row, yarn over, pull through both, and finish. So we're doing a single crochet, we're just putting our hook through this lower leftover loop also. So through the leftover front loop, through the front loop on our current row, and finish the single crochet. Through the front loop, through the front loop, finish the single crochet. Okay, so that's one row of thermal. It's not really going to look very thermal yet because you got to keep going. But you can see it creates this really sharp bend, so this loop is really easy to find on the next row. So now we'll do another row, chain one that doesn't count as a stitch. Now we'll continue on. Again, we're going to go up from the bottom through the leftover front loop from the row below and the front loop of our current row. Yarn over, pull through, finish the single crochet. And you can actually do this with other stitches too. It'll make a denser fabric if it's a taller stitch because it'll kind of squeeze it more. I really like it with the single crochet though. So up through that loop, up through that loop, finish the single crochet. Up through that loop, up through that loop, finish the single crochet. Up through there, up through there. And the very end of the row is always a little bit weird, but there's still the two loops to go through, and then finish the single crochet. So now you can see it's starting to get thick. And here, this is going to be my loop for the next row. I'll do a couple more rows just so you can start to see what it looks like as you go. So up from the bottom, up through the front loop, up underneath, through both loops. And once you get going, you'll get much faster at it because those loops do kind of line right up, so you can kind of go through them both without too much trouble. It is kind of a slower stitch because it squeezes the fabric together, so it takes a little bit longer to make a fabric with the thermal stitch than with just, say, a regular single crochet, because they're just squished together more. But that is what makes them so thick and warm and wonderful. So, and at the very last row, when you're all done with your fabric, if you don't want to have that leftover ridge on one side, maybe that's the inside of your fabric, so maybe you don't really care about that extra ridge, but if you do care about it, then on your very last row you can just go through both loops of your top stitch instead of just one, so you could go through both, and that would take care of that ridge on the bottom. So there's our thermal stitch. Nice and warm and cozy, dense. You don't see through it at all. Like, you can see through a little bit here on the bottom where the single crochet was, but the thermal stitch part, it's solid fabric. It's not gappy, it's not holey, it's warm, it's thick, it's not going to let a lot of wind through. You know, it's thermal, holds in that air. So that is how to crochet the thermal stitch. Now, if you are looking at the crochet hat pattern, the thermal hat, it's a little bit different because it's worked in the round. So you have to be able to do what I called a back thermal stitch. So I'm going to pretend that I'm working in the round here just by, I'm going to do a back row here of a back loop only single crochet just to kind of set up to show you how to do the back thermal stitch. Now, depending on how your pattern is set up, you might not ever need to do a back thermal, but since I use it in one of my patterns, I will show you how to do it. Okay, so now if I was going to do a back thermal stitch, let's work on the back of the fabric. I'm going to go through the back loop from the top, and then through the leftover back loop from the row below, yarn over, pull through both, finish the single crochet. So it's very similar to a front thermal stitch. I'm just going through both of those loops on the back side instead. So the back loop and the back loop, the back loop and the back loop. And you could do a whole fabric using the back instead of the front if you want. It wouldn't really matter. The only reason I use it in the hat is because I didn't want to have turns, because I felt like it made the seams a little bit less obvious in that hat. So that's how to do the back thermal. It's going to look very, very similar to the front thermal if I kept going. So this would be the extra back loop for the next row, back loop and back loop. And you could just keep going. So that's kind of a variation on the thermal stitch to do the back thermal. I hope this tutorial is helpful and that you have lots of fun with this awesome stitch. Happy crocheting!